The idyllic shores of the Pacific Islands can evoke images of a pristine, tranquil world. While the setting is certainly beautiful, the Pacific region, like the rest of the developing world, is grappling with economic, environmental, cultural, and social changes. A prominent and extremely serious concern within this mix of development challenges is the long-term effects of climate change. These remote and isolated islands now find themselves at the front line of a global struggle against the impacts of climate change. Climate change as a concept is relatively new. It refers to long-term changes in the climate resulting from the actions of humankind, mainly burning fossil fuels. The Earth's climate has always shown variation from one year to the next and from one decade to the next, and Pacific Islanders have managed to cope with these past changes. However, now climate change adds a new and more serious level of change, one that affects all aspects of their livelihoods and in some cases the very existence of low-lying islands.
When we're talking about climate change, we're talking about changes over a long period of time. Weather is more day to day, month to month, season to season, year to year. If we're talking about climate, we're talking about at least 30 years. And meteorologists and climatologists and scientists have been measuring things like temperature, rainfall, wind, humidity, every hour, every day, for at least the last 60 years. And if we look at that information, then we see that there are long-term changes.
The Secretariat of the Pacific Community, referred to as SPC, is the Pacific Island region's principal technical and scientific organization. It is assisting regional efforts to improve the understanding of climate change and develop effective strategies to build resilience.
It's quite clear that climate change represents a lot of challenges for Pacific Island countries, but they do vary depending on where you are. So if you're in a large Western Pacific Melanesian country, you face a very different range of climate change issues than if you're in a Central Pacific atoll country. And it was just to give some idea to people that there's different issues facing different countries and there's not one glove fits all.
The SPC implemented Global Climate Change Alliance Pacific Small Island States, or the GCCA PSIS project, is a European Union-funded initiative. The project is primarily driven at the country level by national governments, with each determining the area of focus for climate change adaptation activities in their country.
Our project is slightly different. We haven't come in and said, right, we're going to do water. It's more a case of, where are your gaps? Where are your specific needs? We have so much in the way of funds, and what would that help you begin to address? And they they seem to appreciate that approach.
International cooperation is needed to reduce greenhouse emissions, including cooperation within our region. Just as vital is the need to effectively adapt to climate changes that are already considered unavoidable. This is especially important among developing small island states such as the Cook Islands.
Environmental education across the board is really what we need to consider when we're talking about climate change, because if you go out there and talk about climate change as a topic on its own, people get, they get taken aback and then they say, oh, no, this is too technical for me. So what we do here then is we make sure that we're linking it back to our everyday lives, things like littering, things like overfishing in our lagoons, throwing rubbish into the streams or into the lagoons or onto the street, things like that, small things. if they can make small changes every day, then it contributes to a bigger response, bigger positive response for our country as a whole.
The El Niño-La Niña phenomenon, a natural event, has raised awareness amongst communities of the potential effect of extreme weather variability on health. In the southern Cook Islands, including Rarotonga, La Niña events bring warmer, wetter conditions, which have been linked to cyclic outbreaks of vector-borne diseases like dengue fever, as well as other infectious diseases such as cholera. In order to address the impact of climate change on health, the Cook Islands Ministry of Health, in partnership with the National Environment Service and police, has undertaken a highly successful adaptation program. The Regular Household Tutaka Health Initiative provides routine surveillance of potential mosquito breeding sites.
The last couple of 10 years, we never experienced this heavy rain flooding. But now we can see the climate is changing. So the Ministry of Health, in relation to that, I believe is the one can be in our situation, vector control people, is increase of dengue fever. So that's why we encourage people after every heavy flood, the raining, to make sure there is no possible breeding places around. The cycle of mosquito, when it rains, then you expect high increase of mosquito within 14 days.
It's a good program, and I'm glad we've had this program for more than 70 years. I think New Zealand introduced it in the 40s when we had the dengue fever. And since then, it has evolved into a conscience for the people to start cleaning, whether there is a tutaka or not. So you will find that people are cleaning their yard. It's part of the culture now, if I may use that word. It's part of the cleaning practices of the homes.
Closer to the Earth's equator lies the Republic of Kiribati, a cluster of 33 atolls with a total land area of 800 square kilometers. Much of the main atoll, Tarawa, barely stretches half a kilometer wide and rises just 3 meters above sea level.
Debita noria de kanga yabusin tadi. Pa edikira kenda. Nang dia tasa di tino batera. Orang aja kanga samon nanda. Saya was samon rota kiai. Di karena di matu ade yakagin di yabusin tadi an. Maka karena setiap kali ya tadi setiap karena saya warung maka jadi orang korang yabusin nara tahu.
Kiribati's population is likely to double in size by 2025. This, combined with sea level rise, loss of land, and compromised food security, will cause many people to move and potentially exacerbate the problem of urbanization and overcrowding in South Tarawa. This would put families living in South Tarawa at even greater health risk.
Vector-borne diseases, that is diseases spread by primarily mosquitoes, which here in Kiribati refers mainly to dengue fever. Waterborne diseases, diseases related to contamination of water or scarcity of water that mainly lead to diarrheal disease. Foodborne diseases, similarly, carry a risk of diarrheal illness, and issues related to disease surveillance, because climate change for the most part will act more as a multiplier or amplifier of current health issues rather than bringing new issues. So in that sense, surveillance or monitoring for disease activity is one of the most important adaptation measures that a country, including Kiribati, can do in the context of climate change.
Climate change poses a challenge to the continued human habitation of this island nation over the next 50 to 100 years or more. The ultimate relocation of its people may be inevitable.
The second issue was
For the time being, a proactive approach is being taken, adapting to climate change and preparing future generations of e-Kiribati to be more resilient to environmental, health, and social problems.
What we're basically doing is trying to support the environmental health monitoring capability. They've got some good people who are able to do the testing, but it's a least developed country here. They're simply not able to afford the reagents, the chemicals on a regular basis, or the transport to go out and collect all the information about where the mosquitoes are breeding and where the water is contaminated. And then it's another step as well to communicate that to the communities. So by the end of the next couple of years that our project's being implemented over, we're really hoping that that starts to be seen.
For us, it's continually engage the communities, raise their awareness, as well as getting them to involve in the various programs that we are doing at the government level, with our hope that when they participate, they will also realize that there are things that they need not to do, and there are things that they may do to assist to improve their livelihoods, the health of the environment they are living in.
Kiribati does not stand alone in facing the challenges of climate change. Among the low-lying coral atolls and islands of Tuvalu, sea level rise and high population density are having a profound effect in areas such as food security.
What they'd like us to do is to, and this is still in the planning stage, I should say at the moment, is basically to take out the old senile coconuts. Not just cut them down, but take them out totally, take out their roots. And in some cases plant new coconuts, but also plant some other food crops such as breadfruit and cassava. So this is going to be the focus, we think, in Tuvalu, looking a little bit at food security and also trying to strengthen their resilience to possibly future droughts, future food shortages, what might come in the future.
Water tanks of all colors, shapes and sizes occupy a fairly large portion of Tuvalu's economic hub and capital, Funafuti. With no rivers, Tuvalu is totally reliant on rainwater. Here, individual households are responsible for their own harvesting and management of water supply.
Some of the challenging new issues that are coming up is the space. If we are continue to, because population is increasing, we need to build more houses, and if the area is covered by a significant area is covered by water tanks, then that leaves us less space to make new developments.
In Lofeangai, considered one of the most vulnerable communities on Funafuti, a new development is taking shape. This community is about to benefit from the Pacific Adaptation to Climate Change Project, or the PACC, one of many water-related initiatives being implemented on the ground.
We are all praying to let that project be completed, because it will be, a big blessing to this community here. So we just pray that that project is going to be very soon completed.
One of the most remote and beautiful places on Earth, the Federated States of Micronesia, is coming to terms with rising commodity prices, including food. Many here have growing concern about how they will continue to afford staples and what will be available in the future.
That's an unfortunate part of it, but it's a reality. There are local food, but people shifted from consumption of local food over the past decade, and now consuming a lot of imported food.
Traditionally, the people of FSM have depended on local staples such as root crops, bananas, breadfruits, seasonal fruits, and seafood for their food security. However, insufficient rainfall has caused water and food shortages. This further compounds social factors including increased urbanization, leaving fewer people to work the land and supply food to communities.
When we look at food security, we're targeting more the most vulnerable islands, and these are the outlying islands or atolls. We have about 30% of, roughly 30% of the FSM populations living on those small islands.
Climate change affects all four dimensions of food security: food availability, access to food, stability of food supplies, and food utilization. In FSM, people have become increasingly reliant on imported food, and unfortunately, many of these have lower nutritional values than traditional staples.
Maybe enhance or stimulate the consumption of local food. We're also partnering with the state agencies, NGOs, and I think one very important NGO in this area is Island Food Community of Pohnpei, where they're doing a lot of awareness, encouraging the consumption of healthy food.
In order to help address the problems of Pohnpei and promote local foods, the island's food community of Pohnpei was set up to help bring the focus back to local produce and promote healthy living. The organization has been working with communities throughout the FSM to promote nutritious varieties of local food crops such as bananas and giant swamp taro.
We are able to see more utilization of local food. You know, when you drive around the main town in Pohnpei, Colonia, you see a lot of locally produced takeout food, you know, already cooked, available. We don't really have this like 10, 15 years ago.
Food security is crucial for human survival. For small and delicately balanced Pacific communities such as FSM, climate variability and change represent a significant challenge.
At the moment, a lot of the political dialogue in the region is a sense, a bit of panic and urgency about the need to adapt. It's quite clear this region will need to adapt, and in some countries adapt to certain things like sea level rise, which is a longer term issue. They will need to adapt to these, but it's also important to realise that we don't have to do it all today, that these changes are very slow, and that the region will look very different at the end of the century compared to what they do now, but it moves very slowly. So things like sea level rise is a very slow process, and besides a few of the low-lying areas and some of the coastal fringes on atoll countries, for most countries it's not really a major issue until later this century. But things like health, water security, food security, and reducing risk of exposure to extreme weather events, they are critical.
I think we need our governments to also take certain measures relating to planning, relating to financing, but I don't think it's a case of just wait for the government to do it. I think there's a lot of fairly common sense measures, planning measures, things that'll, what we call in climate change technology, a no regrets option, which basically means you get benefits regardless of what's going to happen with climate change, that can perhaps safeguard our lives and livelihoods.
Climate change is a global concern and one that is particularly important to Pacific Islands. Their limited land size, access to resources, geographical isolation and vulnerability to natural disasters make adapting to climate change a complex task. Small remote island nations such as the Cook Islands, Republic of Kiribati, Tuvalu and the Federated States of Micronesia, with their rich background of traditional knowledge, may in fact hold valuable lessons for the rest of the world as it tries to deal with changes to the planet's climate.
We must in the Pacific continue to adapt to climate change because climate change is very real to us in the Pacific and it's very important and it's going to become increasingly so. We must address the cause of the problem, which is the increased greenhouse gas emissions. So that's, I think, the message I think we must all keep clearly in mind as we go about our climate adaptation activities.
The time to adapt is now. And very possibly, it is simple everyday actions like reducing the breeding grounds for mosquitoes, reducing health problems, and avoiding unsustainable human practices that when multiplied over and over, may hold the key to climate change adaptation.